The massive screens in Times Square froze, flickering before displaying an unexpected message. The same scene repeated across every major city on Earth. A collective gasp echoed around the world as sleek, silver ships appeared in orbit, their designs unlike anything humans had ever created. Admiral James watched from the UN headquarters as the first transmission came through. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council, a federation of over 300 species that governed most of the known universe. Their timing was perfect. Humanity had just successfully tested their first FTL drive the previous month. "We welcome humanity to the greater galactic community," the alien representative announced. Its crystalline body shimmered as it spoke, mandibles clicking in what seemed to be excitement. "Your achievement of faster-than-light travel qualifies you for membership consideration." The world leaders gathered in New York didn't miss the word consideration. Admiral James exchanged glances with President Rodriguez, both noting the subtle condescension in the alien's tone. The council sent 3 representatives to Earth within the week. They arrived in a ship that dwarfed humanity's largest space station. The vessel gleamed like polished platinum, its hull decorated with symbols representing hundreds of member species. The message was clear: look how small you are compared to us. The first meeting took place in the newly constructed planetary assembly. The council representatives, tall crystalline beings, a floating mass of tentacles, and a humanoid with blue skin, presented their case with practiced ease. "Your species shows remarkable potential," the crystalline being, who called itself first speaker, declared. "We offer you protection, technology, and trade routes that span the galaxy." Admiral James noticed how the first speaker emphasized protection, while glossing over the requirements for membership. When he requested details about military limitations, the blue-skinned alien smoothly changed the subject. President Rodriguez maintained a diplomatic smile, but her eyes narrowed at each vague answer. The council representatives spoke of prosperity and advancement, yet whenever human leaders asked specific questions about governance and voting rights, they received only generalities in response. "All member species enjoy equal benefits," the tentacled being assured them, its translator making its burbling sounds into pleasant English. But something in the way its tentacles twisted suggested otherwise. During a break in negotiations, Admiral James found a quiet corner to review the preliminary agreement. His military training kicked in as he spotted carefully worded clauses about defensive coordination and resource sharing. Each paragraph seemed designed to slowly strip Earth of its independence while maintaining the illusion of autonomy. "They think we're desperate to join," he muttered to President Rodriguez when she joined him. "They've probably never had a species take time to actually read the fine print." "Then they don't understand humans very well," she replied, her face grim. "Have you noticed how they react whenever we mention their newer members? There's something they're not telling us." The council representatives grew increasingly impatient as days turned into weeks. They had expected Earth to jump at the chance for membership, just as hundreds of species had done before. Instead, they faced endless questions and requests for clarification. "This is unprecedented," the first speaker finally declared, its crystalline form vibrating with barely contained frustration. "No species has ever required such extensive review of standard membership protocols." "Then perhaps it's time someone did," President Rodriguez responded calmly. "Humanity has learned from its own history that rushing into unequal treaties rarely ends well for the weaker party." The meeting ended with the council representatives returning to their ship, visibly disturbed by humanity's reluctance. They left behind the membership agreement, expecting Earth's leaders to see reason and sign it soon. What they didn't know was that Admiral James had already dispatched quiet orders to accelerate humanity's backup plans. As the Council's ship disappeared into the darkness of space, research teams across Earth were working overtime on their own FTL improvements. Colony ships were being constructed in secret underground facilities, and resource stockpiles were growing daily. The Galactic Council had made a crucial mistake. They assumed humanity would behave like every other species they'd encountered, eager to join, desperate to please. They never considered that humans might simply walk away. They would soon learn just how wrong they were. 3 months after the council's visit, the analysis team worked through another sleepless night in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens covered every wall, displaying countless documents obtained from the council's public archives. Dr. Thomas, the lead economic analyst, stared at his calculations with growing concern. He had finally cracked the pattern hidden in centuries of trade agreements. "Look at this," he called to his colleagues, pointing at the data streams. Every new member species follows the same economic trajectory. The pattern was subtle but unmistakable. New members experienced a brief period of growth, followed by a steady decline in their independent production capabilities. Within 50 years, most species became completely dependent on council trade networks. "They're not partners," Dr. Thomas explained during the emergency meeting with Earth's leadership. "They're assets being managed for maximum return." Admiral James studied the reports, his expression darkening. The military analysis was equally troubling. Hidden beneath layers of diplomatic language, the Council's defense protocols effectively stripped new members of their ability to maintain independent military forces. "They allow you to keep your ships and weapons," the Admiral explained, "but control every aspect of how you can use them. It's like having a gun that only fires when someone else pulls the trigger." President Rodriguez watched the holographic display showing the fate of the Council's newest members. Species after species had fallen into the same trap, their economies and militaries slowly absorbed into the Council's control. "What about their technology sharing program?" she asked. Dr. Thomas pulled up another chart. "It's basically a loan shark operation. They give you advanced tech, but the maintenance costs are astronomical. You end up working just to keep their systems running." In orbital shipyards, human engineers were already implementing improvements to their FTL drives, carefully avoiding any dependency on Council technology. The new designs weren't as elegant as the Council's, but they were entirely human-made and understood. Meanwhile, Earth's first autonomous colonies were taking root on distant worlds, established in systems the Council considered too remote or resource-poor to be valuable. Humanity was quietly building its own network, independent of Council oversight. "They're getting suspicious," Admiral James reported, showing recent surveillance footage of Council ships at the edge of human space. "They expected us to be begging for membership by now." The Council's latest message proved his point. Their tone had shifted from welcoming to concerned. They warned about the dangers of independent development and the risks of refusing Council protection. President Rodriguez gathered her advisors for a critical decision. The evidence was clear. The Council's offer of membership was a carefully crafted trap, one that had snared hundreds of species before them. "How are our preparations coming along?" she asked. "Better than expected," Admiral James replied. "Our colonies are self-sufficient, and our industrial capacity grows daily. More importantly, we've made contact with several smaller species who are equally unhappy with Council control." Dr. Thomas added his own report. "We've developed alternative trade routes that bypass Council space entirely. It's not as efficient as their network, but it's ours." The Council's representatives were due to return in 1 week, expecting Earth's final answer. They had no idea that humanity had spent months preparing for a response they had never encountered before. "Send word to all our facilities," President Rodriguez ordered. "Initiate protocol independence, but keep it quiet. Let's not show our hand too soon." Across the solar system and beyond, human installations received their orders. Supply chains shifted, communications were rerouted, and defensive positions were quietly strengthened. In their arrogance, the Council had made a fatal mistake. They assumed humanity would follow the same path as every other species, too dazzled by advanced technology and promises of prosperity to notice the chains being placed around them. They were about to learn that humans had a long history of rejecting gilded cages, no matter how comfortable they appeared to be. The stage was set for a response that would shake the foundations of the Galactic Council's carefully maintained order. The council chamber fell silent as President Rodriguez finished presenting Earth's counter-proposal. The crystalline first speaker's surface had turned a deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation, the humans had learned. "This is unprecedented," the first speaker finally managed. Its translator struggled to convey the mix of shock and indignation in its voice. "You wish to modify our standard membership agreement." "Not modify," President Rodriguez corrected firmly. "Replace. We've prepared our own terms for a mutual partnership." Admiral James stood beside her, watching the council members' reactions. The floating tentacled being had turned a sickly shade of gray, while the blue-skinned representative's mouth hung open in a very human expression of disbelief. Earth's proposal was simple but revolutionary. Equal voting rights from day one, unrestricted military autonomy, and free trade with both council and non-council worlds. Most shocking of all, they demanded the right to maintain independent colonies outside council space. "Impossible," the blue-skinned representative burst out. "No new species has ever demanded such privileges. It takes centuries to earn such rights." "Perhaps," Admiral James replied calmly. "That's because no one ever thought to ask." The humans had chosen their timing carefully. As the council representatives sputtered their objections, automated probes across the galaxy were broadcasting evidence of thriving human colonies in systems the council had dismissed as worthless. "These settlements," the first speaker gestured at the holographic display, "they are in violation of council guidelines for expansion." "Guidelines," President Rodriguez emphasized, "that we never agreed to follow. Earth is not yet a member of your council. We are free to settle where we choose." The revelation of the colonies was carefully calculated. What the council didn't know was that for every visible settlement, 3 more remained hidden, shielded by new technology, developed specifically to avoid detection. "You must understand," the tentacled being burbled anxiously. "There are protocols, traditions. The council has maintained order for millennia through careful control of expansion and development." "Control," Admiral James noted, "is exactly what we're refusing to accept." President Rodriguez activated another holographic display, showing trade routes that bypassed council space entirely. "We've also established independent economic partnerships with several frontier worlds that your council has historically ignored." The council members exchanged alarmed glances. They had never encountered a species that built its own infrastructure before applying for membership. Their entire system relied on new members being dependent on council resources. "This is your final opportunity," the first speaker declared, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Accept our standard membership terms, or face isolation from galactic civilization." The human leaders exchanged knowing smiles. "We anticipated that response," President Rodriguez said. She activated a final display, showing dozens of ships departing Earth's solar system. "Which is why we've already begun establishing our own civilization." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from smaller member species watched the proceedings with poorly concealed interest. Some even seemed hopeful. "You cannot simply walk away," the blue-skinned representative shouted. "Every species needs the council." "That," Admiral James replied quietly, "is where you're wrong. We don't need you, but we're willing to work with you, as equals, not subjects." As the humans prepared to leave the chamber, President Rodriguez delivered their final message. "You have 1 standard month to consider our terms. After that, we'll proceed with our own plans for galactic integration." The council representatives watched in stunned silence as the human delegation departed. For the first time in their long history, they faced a species that didn't view council membership as the ultimate achievement. Outside the chamber, Admiral James checked his secure communicator. Reports were coming in from across human space. Their backup plans were proceeding perfectly. If the council rejected their terms, humanity was ready to forge its own path among the stars. They had shown the galaxy something it had never seen before, a species confident enough to walk away from the greatest power in known space. The next move belonged to the Council. The Council's response came exactly as humanity had predicted. Their massive trade ships suddenly withdrew from human space, their diplomats recalled, and official communications ceased. They expected Earth to panic, to come crawling back within days. Instead, they received videos of human markets continuing to bustle, factories running at full capacity, and colonies expanding. Their attempt at economic pressure had failed before it even began. Admiral James watched from the bridge of Earth's newest flagship as another Council surveillance vessel hovered at the edge of human space. "They still think we're bluffing," he commented to his second-in-command. The ship's sensors detected increasing numbers of Council vessels gathering near their borders. It was meant to be intimidating. Instead, it merely confirmed that their strategy was working. In the Council's central chamber, the first speaker faced an unprecedented crisis. Reports flooded in from border worlds. Human traders were offering better deals than Council-approved merchants. Worse, they were paying in pure resources rather than Council credits. "This must be stopped," the first speaker declared, its crystalline form flashing angry red. "They're disrupting thousands of years of carefully managed trade." But the humans had planned for this moment. When Council ships attempted to blockade human trade routes, they discovered those routes had already changed. The humans were using paths through supposedly worthless systems, moving goods through corridors the Council had never bothered to monitor. President Rodriguez stood before the United Earth Parliament, delivering news of the Council's latest threats. "They have demanded we cease all independent trade activities," she announced. "Their ultimatum gives us 1 week to comply." The Parliament's response was unified laughter. Behind closed doors, human intelligence reported something the Council didn't want anyone to know. Their pressure tactics were backfiring spectacularly. Several smaller member species had begun quietly reaching out to human diplomats, asking about alternative trade arrangements. "Show them our response," President Rodriguez ordered. Across Council space, every communications channel suddenly carried the same message. Earth was considering other options for galactic participation. The phrasing was deliberate, carefully crafted to hint at what humanity had discovered. The Council's economic experts were the first to realize the true danger. Humanity wasn't just refusing to comply. They were creating an entirely new economic system, one that operated completely outside Council control. "Impossible," the blue-skinned representative protested during an emergency session. "No single species can maintain an independent economy in modern space." "They're not doing it alone," another member whispered. "Look at these trade patterns. At least 15 border worlds are already participating in their network." The Council's worst fears were confirmed when the humans broadcast their response to the ultimatum. Instead of capitulation, they announced the formation of the Independent Trading Alliance, open to any world or species interested in free trade. Admiral James watched the Council's reaction from humanity's hidden command center deep in the Rocky Mountains. "They're finally beginning to understand," he noted as reports of panic in the Council chamber reached them. The Council's carefully maintained economic control relied on one crucial factor: the belief that their system was the only option. Humanity had just proved that assumption wrong. "Their next move will be military," President Rodriguez predicted during the emergency briefing. "Not direct conflict. They'll try to show force to scare other species away from joining us." But even here, humanity had prepared. As Council warships moved to patrol human trade routes, they found themselves tracked by advanced automated defense platforms. The humans had seeded their trade corridors with protective measures that made military intimidation costly and dangerous. The Council faced a situation they had never encountered in their thousands of years of existence. Their threats had failed. Their economic pressure had backfired. Their military posturing had proven ineffective. And now, worlds that had been loyal Council members for centuries were beginning to ask dangerous questions. The humans hadn't just refused to join the Council's system, they had created an alternative, one that was already proving dangerously attractive to others. The galaxy was about to change, and there was nothing the Council could do to stop it. The official announcement of the Independent Systems Alliance shook the galactic community to its core. Broadcast simultaneously from Earth and 7 former Council border worlds, it offered something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia: choice. "We propose a new way forward," President Rodriguez declared to an audience that spanned hundreds of light years. "An alliance based on mutual respect and true cooperation, not control and dependency." In the Council's central chamber, panic erupted as the 7 worlds formally declared their withdrawal from Council membership. They were small worlds, considered insignificant by Council standards, but their action was unprecedented. Admiral James watched from the newly commissioned Independence Station as reports flooded in. 3 more worlds had quietly approached human diplomats, seeking information about joining the alliance. They weren't leaving the Council yet, but they were preparing for the possibility. "The Council never understood what they taught us," he commented to his staff. "By trying to force us to join them, they showed us exactly how their system could be broken." The Alliance's founding charter was deliberately simple. Member worlds retained full autonomy. Shared technology was truly shared, including maintenance knowledge, and military cooperation was voluntary, not commanded. In their hidden command center, Dr. Thomas presented the latest economic projections. "The Council's trading system is already showing cracks," he explained. "They built it assuming no alternatives would ever exist. Now that one does." President Rodriguez studied the data. The Alliance wasn't trying to destroy the Council's economy. They didn't need to. Simply by existing, they were causing the Council's carefully controlled system to unravel. Across Council space, species that had been members for centuries began asking questions they'd never dared ask before. Why couldn't they trade directly with each other? Why did all technology have to flow through Council centers? Why did the Council need to approve their defense strategies? The humans had expected the Council to respond with force. Instead, they faced something worse: irrelevance. "Another trade hub has declared independence," Admiral James reported during the daily briefing. "They're not joining us yet, but they're no longer accepting Council economic controls." The alliance grew steadily, not through force or coercion, but by simply offering a better way. Humans shared their FTL technology freely with alliance members, teaching them how to build and maintain it themselves. "You don't understand what you're doing," the first speaker had transmitted during their last communication. "The galaxy needs order, structure, control." "No," President Rodriguez had replied calmly. "What the galaxy needs is freedom to choose its own path." In the 6 months since the Alliance's formation, humanity had proved that cooperation without control was possible. Alliance worlds were developing new technologies, establishing direct trade relationships, and growing stronger together. The Council's response shifted from threats to desperate offers. They promised Earth special status, exceptional privileges, anything to stop the spread of the Alliance idea. But they still didn't understand. Humanity wasn't interested in being an exception to their rules. They wanted to break the rules entirely. Admiral James stood on the observation deck of Independence Station, watching ships from a dozen different species dock and trade freely. Some were Alliance members, others were independents, and a few were even from Council worlds, quietly exploring alternatives. They had thousands of years to perfect their system, he mused, and we broke it simply by walking away. In the Alliance's new headquarters, built on a previously overlooked world, President Rodriguez met with representatives from 20 species. Some were former Council members. Others were from worlds that had never been considered important enough for Council membership. "We don't offer protection," she told them. "We offer partnership. We don't demand control. We share knowledge. We don't enforce compliance. We encourage cooperation." The galaxy was transforming, not through war or revolution, but through the simple act of choosing a different path. The Council's greatest fear had come true. Not that humanity would fight them, but that humanity would show others they didn't need the Council at all. The age of controlled unity was ending. The era of chosen alliance had begun. The Council chamber, once the proud center of galactic power, now echoed with the sounds of departing members. What had started as a trickle had become a flood. Each day brought new announcements of worlds choosing to leave. The Proxima trading hub has voted to withdraw. A junior aide reported to President Rodriguez. That's the third major economic center this month. The alliance hadn't planned this mass exodus, but they were ready for it. Human diplomatic teams, working alongside representatives from other alliance worlds, helped ensure peaceful transitions. No world was pressured to choose sides. They simply had to choose their own path. Admiral James monitored the situation from the alliance's new headquarters. The Council's trying to hold their trading network together, he reported. But without the monopoly they once had, their whole system is falling apart. The Council's desperate attempts to maintain control only accelerated their decline. When they tried to punish leaving members with trade restrictions, other worlds saw it as confirmation that leaving was the right choice. In the Council's central banking system, economists watched in horror as their currency lost value. The Council credit, once the only accepted form of galactic trade, was being replaced by direct resource exchange and local currencies. Another shipping consortium has declared independence, Dr. Thomas announced during the morning briefing. They're offering direct routes between former Council worlds, no oversight required. The Council's power had always rested on one crucial foundation, the belief that their system was necessary for galactic civilization to function. Now that belief was crumbling, and with it, their authority. President Rodriguez met with representatives from newly independent worlds. Many were angry at centuries of Council control, but human diplomats helped channel that anger into productive change. "We don't seek revenge," she reminded them. "We're building something new, not destroying the old." The humans had learned from Earth's history. They knew that helping former Council worlds transition peacefully was crucial. Alliance technical teams shared knowledge freely, helping worlds regain control of their own infrastructure. The Council's major shipyards are shutting down. Admiral James noted, their standardized design protocols are being abandoned. Each world is developing its own solutions now. The Council had never expected this kind of collapse. They had prepared for rebellion, for war, for economic competition, but they hadn't prepared for irrelevance. In their last desperate bid for control, the Council attempted to seal their borders, to isolate the contaminated regions where independence had taken root. It failed spectacularly. "You can't stop ideas," Dr. Thomas explained to a group of newly independent world leaders. "The moment people realize they have a choice, everything changes." The alliance grew, not through conquest or coercion, but through example. They proved that worlds could cooperate without submitting to central control. Trade could flourish without oversight. Technology could advance without restriction. "The Council's diplomatic course is collapsing," reported a human observer. Their own diplomats are refusing to enforce restrictions they no longer believe in. The change wasn't just political or economic, it was cultural. Species that had accepted Council authority for generations began rediscovering their independence. Ancient trading patterns, suppressed for centuries, re-emerge. President Rodriguez watched from Alliance headquarters as another group of worlds announced their independence. "We're witnessing the end of an era," she told her advisors. "Not through war, but through choice." The Council's remaining leaders finally faced a truth they had never imagined. Their power had always been based on acceptance, not force. Once that acceptance vanished, no amount of threats or promises could bring it back. Admiral James stood on the bridge of his ship, watching vessels of all shapes and sizes move freely through Alliance space. "They spent thousands of years building walls," he mused. "We changed the galaxy simply by showing people they could walk away." The exodus continued, not in panic or chaos, but in steadied, determined waves. Each world that left the Council found its own path. Some joined the Alliance, others remained independent, and some formed their own smaller confederations. The age of central control was ending, not with a bang, but with the quiet footsteps of those walking away to find their own future. 1 year after the Great Exodus began, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The Council, once the supreme power among the stars, had been reduced to a fraction of its former size. But from this humbling came something unexpected: wisdom. "We request a meeting." The message from the council read, "Not to negotiate surrender or supremacy, but to discuss a genuine partnership." President Rodriguez stood in the Alliance's grand chamber, now filled with representatives from hundreds of independent worlds. The council's remaining leaders sat across from them, their postures showing something new: humility. "We were wrong," the first speaker admitted, its crystalline form glowing a soft blue of sincerity. "For thousands of years, we thought control was the only path to stability. You proved otherwise." Admiral James watched from his position beside the president. The council delegation was smaller now, but different. Gone were the demands for compliance and the subtle threats. In their place was a genuine desire to understand. "We don't want to destroy what remains of the council," President Rodriguez explained. "We want to help build something better." The new galactic structure that emerged was unlike anything before. The reformed council became one of several major alliances, each with its own approach to cooperation. Worlds could choose their affiliations or remain independent. "Look at these trade reports," Dr. Thomas shared during a review session. "Overall commerce has increased by 300% since the changes began. When you remove artificial restrictions, natural partnerships form." The council's greatest fear, that independence would lead to chaos, had proven false. Instead, a new kind of order emerged, based on choice rather than control. Worlds traded freely, shared technology willingly, and solved problems cooperatively. The shipyards at Alpha Centauri just completed their first joint project. Admiral James reported, "Council engineers working alongside Alliance teams. The results are impressive." Innovation flourished in this new environment. Without the Council's standardization requirements, species developed technologies suited to their unique needs. Yet they shared their discoveries freely, leading to unprecedented advances. President Rodriguez walked through the new Galactic Exchange Center, where representatives from all political entities could meet and trade. Council members mingled with Alliance worlds and independents, each bringing their own strengths to the table. "We never imagined this outcome," the former first speaker admitted during a private meeting. "We thought giving up control meant giving up civilization. Instead, it made civilization stronger." The humans had achieved something remarkable, not by fighting the old system, but by showing a better way was possible. Their willingness to walk away had changed the galaxy more profoundly than any war could have. "Another education exchange program has opened," Dr. Thomas announced. "This time on a former Council core world. They're teaching everything from Alliance FTL mechanics to traditional Council energy systems." The fear that had driven the Council's control was fading. In its place grew something more valuable: trust. Species that had been isolated by Council protocols now shared their unique perspectives and abilities freely. "The border patrols are different now," Admiral James observed. "Instead of enforcing restrictions, they're coordinating rescue operations and anti-piracy efforts. Real cooperation, not forced compliance." In the Alliance headquarters, President Rodriguez met with leaders from across the galaxy. Some wore the reformed Council symbols, others represented independent worlds or new confederations. All were equals at the table. "We've proven that strength doesn't come from control," she told them. "It comes from choice, from trust, and from genuine cooperation." The galaxy had entered a new age. The Council had learned to serve rather than rule. The Alliance had shown that freedom and order could coexist, and humanity had demonstrated that sometimes the most powerful action was simply walking away. "The stars are different now," Admiral James remarked, watching ships of all origins moving freely through space. "Not because they've changed, but because we've changed how we reach for them." The great experiment had succeeded, not through force or revolution, but through the simple power of choosing a different path. The galaxy had found its new balance, and it was stronger for the change. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution wasn't technology or military might. It was showing the galaxy that there was always another way, if you were brave enough to walk away and find it.